Folks, we are going through a remarkable time. In employment, we are seeing epic workforce disruptions and major changes in talent management. This is having a huge impact on everything HR does today. In this panel, we have before us two top HR leaders from well-known firms who are helping to lead their companies through these trying times. Stuart Logan is within BNY Mellon. He is the managing director, head of HR for global operations and technology. And Brian Crane is the senior director of HR digital enablement at Medtronic. They're both going to talk to us about the tools they're using, their priorities, and their plans. First question for both of you, and it's a big picture question. What do you see as the top issues right now and moving forward in aligning talent to business?
So from my side, Patrick, the future of work is top of mind, where people are returning back to work post-pandemic. We have to think about how we hire, both in a hybrid model, people that come into the office and people that come in from a remote perspective, and how we do and how we manage the talent for those that are in. And obviously that gets into the skills, the capabilities, how we train people, physically train, digitally train, virtually train. All of those items coming into back into the office is something that's top of mind and we're working hard on.
Much similar to what Stuart had to say, I think trying to figure out how we're going to meet the needs of today and tomorrow from a human capital standpoint for our company, as well as any other company, amidst a changing backdrop on how people are looking to experience work, either remotely or in person or a mix of those things, while still meeting business objectives. And at the same time, giving visibility to leaders on the collective capabilities of employees at an organization, to be able to do gap analysis and understand where they want to help develop existing employees, as well as find new skills and develop new skills and talents for the future, both internally and externally, and setting a strategy to achieve that objective.
Okay, good answers. Stuart, how do you think companies will become more agile in one, understanding what work has to get done, and two, evolving their workforce to effectively respond to those needs?
Well, I think one of the biggest challenges is that often people are measuring input as a proxy for productivity, and actually it's the output they need to be measuring, and it's a lot harder to measure. So the actual critical items that you've got to work on is really getting into the fluidity and the movement of jobs. So traditionally in the past, you were looking at individuals that were spending time in the same job for 20, 30 years, maybe going up a singular career path. Then we created sort of the Y-based career path where individuals are going up the tech stack or managerial stack. Now we're effectively moving along the lines of really evolving individuals to build skills and competencies, do more gig economy kind of work, where individuals are spending 6 months on project A and 10 months on project B, and building much more fluidity in the way that they work. And you need to store a digital footprint of what those individuals have been doing, so you are able to match them for future opportunities as and when they come up.
This question's for both of you. A concept that seems to be getting much more traction post-pandemic is the idea of a self-evolving organization or culture. And that means self-reliant, self-adapting, self-training, capable of evolving as needs changes. Stuart, you kind of touched on that, but what does it take to put something like this in place? Let's start with Brian first here.
I think first and foremost, I don't think the technology is the hard part. I think it's a culture change in the way that we democratize opportunity and learning, self-guided learning, by creating that internal economy within an organization. So really it's about also breaking down silos of talent, silos within organizations, and creating a mindset that a broad range of skills and employees can be leveraged throughout an enterprise in different places, as opposed to familiarity with siloed proximity, closeness to employees that you've worked with to fill needs, but to think more broadly based on this skill set foundation, which pulls in other potential sources of talent within your organization and externally, and then really getting leaders to adopt that mindset, and to encourage employees to navigate their own careers and be empowered with this new data and transparency.
I know from our readers that self-learning is a huge topic right now, but there's a lot of uncertainty about how to deploy it. How do you architect that, and what role does AI play?
So for me, we've been working, with Eightfold to do a machine learning AI project on sort of basically automating a job library. So it's really looking at the skills and capabilities of every person. But beyond sort of what I call sort of the LinkedIn and the resume, it's getting into training records. It's getting into the movement history of what people have done before and what they, are capable of doing in the future. And if you scale that, now our pilot's really 3,000 people, and we're able to identify, obviously, and validate that the jobs that we have are correct, but we're also able to identify physical jobs that are missing from or hidden because individuals are buried in the organization. And we're able to find, for example, things like predictive analytics, where we've got a couple of hundred people that do predictive analytics as a job, but ultimately they're not sitting in their own job family. And because they're not sitting in their own job family, we're not able to create training and development for those individuals. Same thing with business intelligence. It's sort of sitting within customer service. It's sitting within accounting services. And we need to bring that up so we can effectively train and develop and grow that function. And within that, if you build the right foundation and you understand the jobs and they're evolving, you can create things like communities of practice, where they're looking at both the roles, what's needed today and what's needed tomorrow. For example, if you think of business process reengineering or something along those lines, with regards to quality or process efficiency, then if you had a certain grade that you needed to be, that you were green belt Six Sigma, and as you become more senior, you need to become black belt. You now create a competency-based model that drives a very clear understanding of what it takes to become more senior or grow within the organization. So once that's clear, then individuals will be self-motivated to go learn and grow their careers themselves. That roadmap is something that's missing in a lot of organizations, and it's the holy grail of what we're trying to achieve here at BNY Mellon.
We mentioned earlier the self-evolving organization. We talked about how to get a better handle on what we know about the people within our organization. But with mergers, acquisitions, and spinoffs, how does that complicate this? And how does a greater understanding of jobs and works and skills within your own organizations help with these kinds of new business challenges?
So from a mergers and acquisitions perspective, the first thing you can do is, if you have a standard blueprint of how to ingest the skills and capabilities of the people, and even if they don't have that organized, there's a way of being able to do that. And then you can correlate that to an external model with regards to the way those skills roles are built externally, and you can marry the two items together. And then the way you validate those skills and capabilities is, over time, you effectively ask the managers to validate 6 months, 9 months, 12 months after they join. Are you seeing them at a novice, an intermediate, or an expert level, and evolve that? And obviously, if you've built a very strong model yourself, that when you do divestitures, you're able to provide a much greater amount of data and information back to a divestiture or a receiving organization, in order for them to be able to both place their people in the right job families, or create them if they find that they're missing them themselves.
Any thoughts on that one, Brian?
I think that creating that roadmap and enough information and giving that, informing the employee on what that journey looks like for them, and informing that with emerging skills and needs of the organization to help guide them on where the demand is going to be in the future, so that they can build their capabilities in areas that will be important and in demand internally now and in the future, is really important. So it's a constantly fluid, evolving thing. You never solve for this, and you're constantly updating the needs of the organization, informing an employee on their self development journey, giving them confidence that they're setting themselves up for success while also meeting the needs of the organization moving forward. And so this constantly requires care, attention to detail, connection with strategic workforce planning, so that leaders are articulating their needs now and in the future, and that those are reflected in job requirements for now and in the future. And ultimately, really adoption of all this comes down to, an employee seeing that, seeing other examples of success for where they see an employee willing to take the time and effort to engage and invest in themselves through this process, through this data-driven process of self enrichment and learning, resulting in some outcome for that employee's career that's positive, a positive outcome for them. So it's really, you don't get the whiffum until you start to see proof points that this is working for employees in their personal lives and careers. And then you start to get that organic buy-in from the employee set, as opposed to yet another corporate initiative that gets lost in the noise of everything that they're trying to deal with every day.
Yeah, I have a little story to tell as a way of introducing this question. A little bit ago, I interviewed a global firm that had multiple lines of businesses. One line of business, restaurant supplies, was utterly crushed by the pandemic. They just saw a steep fall off in demand. But another line of business, which made cleaning supplies, saw through the roof demand. They were overwhelmed with requests. So what they did is they went ahead and they did something that they had never done before. They assembled. They had certain business problems in their booming units, and they needed more people power on those. They needed more employees to work on them. So they assembled teams globally, working remotely, to address these various business problems, and they found the approach very successful. And remember, these are people who had never worked before, had entirely different managers, and they were in business units that had, slightly different cultures. But yet they were able to tackle their business problems together. And so I just wanted to tell that story as a way of introducing this question. What does it mean now today, compared to pre-pandemic, to align a workforce with business needs? Whoever wants to go.
I think the biggest challenge that I see is still the future of work. There's certain jobs that are required for you to be in the office, and there's certain jobs that can be pretty much 100% flexible. And then there's sort of a set of jobs that sit in the middle that need to be able to collaborate on some occasions and still provide work-life balance and flexibility on others. So it's the ability to bring those three groups together in a synchronized and asynchronized way. So you need to sort of have both working in tandem with each other. So you have to reimagine it in a way that's never been done before. If you're not careful, you revert back to pre-pandemic, where leaders and managers are expecting the individuals to see the whites of everyone's eyes, and if they don't see them, then effectively they're not productive. But we know we've all gone as an organization, as a company, as individuals through the last 18 months and, succeeded, getting through the pandemic and still keeping businesses, not all, but many businesses have thrived through, or at least rebounded to a point of being able to recover. And I think, how this way of working together in the future is something that's going to be very interesting to see. It's going to be a lot of case studies and a lot of evolution of talent management, I think, is going to happen in the next 12 to 18 months, because getting it right could mean competitive advantage. Getting it wrong could mean that you have 20, 30% of your staff attrit as they go to organizations that are getting it right.
Brian, how do you see the world of work evolving?
I think the one thing that this past year taught us was organizations, and I've spoken to many in our experience at my company, folks had to quickly shift resources to meet different demands, different portions of their business that were in demand and others that had to be paused. And so a lot of companies had line of sight into their employee skill sets in a data-driven way, and others didn't, but they all made it work. So I would say similar to to how there was rapid adoption and acceleration of virtual ways of working. Similarly, I think it was actually a great opportunity for people to see the importance of understanding your workforce in a scalable way, so that you can make broader decisions around how you use your human capital and shift that capital around to maximize business results, and probably in ways that leaders hadn't really been exposed to or been forced to consider in the past. And so I think it provides everyone the opportunity now to think about how do you sustain that over a longer period of time in a more structured way. And so I think it introduces the opportunity for a higher adoption of data-driven insights and understanding through data on understanding your human capital in real time, and how you're able to shift that to meet business demands in probably ways that pre-pandemic, I think the learning curve or the adoption curve would have been much slower, quite frankly.
Understanding of data-driven insights. Just generally, within say your own company, have you made better use of data during the pandemic, and what was the realization that drove you in that direction?
So during the pandemic, we also reorganized the entire company here at Medtronic, and we knew we were going to have restructuring where certain positions were going to be displaced, new positions created, and we actually had data on all of our displaced employees, and we were able to use that to match them in a structured way with new opportunities. Yes, their position had been eliminated in the new organization, but where could they fill a need, meet a need, and apply their skills to provide value to our company? And as a result of that, we doubled, nearly tripled the historical retention of employees who in prior years had been displaced. And so that was a meaningful way that we were able to shift resources to areas, new positions and new areas of need of the company. And now we're looking to expand that to all of our talent management practices on an everyday basis, not just on a restructuring event.
Any thoughts on the dollar value or the benefits of any of these changes, the quantitative?
Yeah, significant. So in the case of our redeployment efforts, severance, COBRA, payroll taxes, all of those costs are avoided in a restructuring. The more you can reallocate your resources as opposed to sever them from the company and use them to meet other business needs. And we realized millions of dollars in cash savings to the company as a result of redeploying our human capital that had been displaced in the reorganization event.
Any thoughts on that, Stuart?
Yeah, so I think we utilize data analytics quite significantly, and at the beginning it was really starting to measure the adoption of digital practices in a virtual world. So as any organization that's going through an evolution of becoming more digital, we had some room to grow with regards to being digitally collaborative. So moving from WebEx to Teams to MS Teams allowed us to visualize that progression. Are people switching their video camera on? Prior to the pandemic, it wasn't very prevalent. Then we moved to Teams, and then we started to build practices in order to go do that. And we could see that through the analytics and the information. We're also able to sort of work out when is the perfect adoption tipping point, when to shut legacy collaboration tools off and keep the new modern ones on in that kind of way. And that's just sort of a relevant example for the pandemic, but that evolves into things like the rebound of what was a very low attrition year at the beginning of the pandemic. And obviously, as we've come out the other side, there's been sort of pent up demand, across the industry, and certain job families we're finding are increasing much quicker than others. And the faster that you can identify, for example, that developers, full stack developers, back end developers, cloud engineers are potentially moving faster than others, the faster you can get to increase salaries and make adjustments out of what is normally a very rigid period once a year, the large companies do, and you're able to really, hopefully, stem off that higher attrition that's coming in a more predictive way. So using data and analytics is very critical for that.
We've talked about speed, you mentioned, and identifying things quickly. I know AI is kind of an amorphous word that gets overused and can mean too much, but it is playing a major role in recruiting and talent and searching for talent and hiring and speeding along those processes. I just wanted to get your thoughts at this point of what you think, how effective has AI been in recruiting and in hiring and in ranking candidates and in accelerating your processes? And where do you think it might be going in the next few years?
From my perspective, I think it's got some very strong use cases with regards to the ability to match jobs to people. And effectively provide tools both for the candidate to be able to match themselves to the right job, as well as to the recruiter to be able to sort of work out the most likely matches very, very quickly, and potentially do some things around diversity that's quite interesting as well, where you can anonymize the profiles being presented to managers and try and remove the bias that may or may not, whether it be conscious or unconscious, could exist in the recruiting process. So I think those are the areas that are very obvious today. I think in the future, the ability to sort of link to very advanced workforce planning, where you could start to build almost like a talent relationship management. If you think of a CRM, a TRM is your ability to segment your talent in the marketplace. And if you know, for example, in the future that we're going to need another 1,000 engineers, it could start to build that sort of pipeline proactively on your behalf. And again, I don't think there's any limitations on what is possible, but I do think we're in the early stages of what is quite a big transformation utilizing AI and machine learning in this space.
Brian, do you see it as a big transformation?
I do. If you ask yourself a question with your organization, can you answer this question? How many data scientists do you have at your company with X skills? Chances are you can't answer that question today without solid data and understanding on the skills and capabilities that your people have holistically. So when you're thinking about, are we going to need double the number of that skill set in the future? Things like, how close are people that aren't data scientists today? How close are they to where in 3 years they can develop and become data scientists when we need them? You need to be able to, with data, to answer those questions to inform your hiring strategy or your staffing strategy over the next 2 to 3 years. And linked into that, obviously, is the development. So that flows. It's a cycle where you're using this platform from recruiting on the front end, like Stuart mentioned, all the way through continuously in internal mobility, development of your employees, all aligned to your human asset needs over time. And so that's really the big opportunity for organizations to mature to get to that place with the use of AI and data.
Good answer. Okay, well, this has been great. Let's wrap this up. Going forward, coming out of the pandemic, what are your priorities?
So I think from my side, the priority, I guess it's rather than being a priority, I would sort of say it's what's our hope for the future. Our hope for the future is to get to a point where the systems that we use to develop and grow our talent are talking to each other, that individuals are spending time and putting their future career aspirations somewhere so that the system is smart enough to know where someone's aiming to go to. And then basically we can coalesce the training needs for the organization and the training tools and provide it to the individual, and then have an intelligent way for, again, the integrated platform to tap the person on the shoulder and say, oh, by the way, we see you're ready now, and this is the next job for you. You should go and apply for it. And if you do that right and at the right scale, and you can integrate that to workforce planning, you've got a competitive advantage with regards to your talent strategy.
Yeah, I would say our vision would be very much aligned to what Stuart shared. It's really what good looks like is moving the needle to have every employee feel confident that where they're working, they can achieve what they want in their career, and we're empowering them to achieve their aspirations. And in order to do that, we need to be able to help them find their path to a fulfilling career while also meeting the needs of our organization, and guiding them to where they have confidence that if they're taking the right steps in their development, that they will achieve what they're looking to achieve in their career. And so having the systems, the information, the data in real time to help inform what the company's needs are now and in the future, back to that employee level for them to choose their path and to be empowered to reach their potential. That's really what our hope is, because then you become a talent destination. You become a place where word gets out. This is a place I want to be. This is where I can go to develop myself. My opportunities are limitless, and I'll be given opportunities and the steps needed to fulfill my career ambitions.
All right. And that's a great way to close this up. Thank you, Stuart and Brian. These were outstanding insights and answers, and appreciate your time greatly. Thank you.